In 2018, Japan's Heisei era was nearing its end, and while not much would change in how Kamen Riders produced from Heisei to the upcoming Reiwa era, Toei still wanted to celebrate the conclusion since Heisei marked the modern revitalization of Kamen Rider for a new generation of viewers. So, to celebrate 20 main Heisei Kamen Rider shows, we have the anniversary season Kamen Rider Gyo to close out the Heisei era. Kamen Rider Gyo stars Tokiwa Sogo, an 18-year-old boy in the year 2018 who lives with his funny uncle at a clock shop who dreams of becoming a king. One day, he is attacked by a man from the future, Gates, who wants to kill Sogo since in 50 years he'll become Oma Gyo, the demonic overlord who will conquer the world with an iron fist. A friend of Gates, Tsukiyomi, tries a more peaceful method of altering the past by trying to convince Sogo to not take up the Gyo powers, but neither of them succeed, as by the end of episode 1, Sogo successfully transforms into Kamen Rider Gyo, though with more optimistic and altruistic intentions than what the perceived future looked like. Opposing our king-to-be is the Time Jackers, consisting of Aura, and Schwartz. They are time travelers who use the powers of past Kamen Riders to make another riders, monstrous versions of previous Kamen Riders from the Heisei era that are meant to become the new overlord. Gyo must collect the Heisei Riders' powers to defeat the Another Riders and become the king he's always meant to be, and Gates relatively tags along in hopes of finding the perfect moment to stop Sogo from ending the world and bringing the hellish future of 2068. Also, Waz exists. He's here to be charismatic as all hell and help Sogo on his king's quest. Since Gyo's an anniversary show, a lot of the arcs are focused on paying tribute to past Kamen Rider seasons, though Gyo has the edge over decade of returning actors coming back to reprise their roles for the tributes. Much like my decade analysis, the bulk of this analysis will be covering what I like or didn't like about each arc, which will lead to our character and thematic dissection. So let's begin with the Build arc. Build was the last series before Gyo, so if all the major players still available for filming, it makes sense that that series was going to be the first to get its cameos for the anniversary. Unfortunately, it doesn't get as fleshed out as it could have been due to being the first 2 episodes, which have to establish Gyo's main cast and status quo, along with paying tribute to Build. The Build tribute more so serves to set the standards of returning actors and writers being in Gyo rather than being anything thematically meaningful to Build series. That said, there's still a lot of great jokes that tie into elements of Build, like Sento and Banjo's relationship or the catchphrases and motif of Build himself. For what it is, I'm happy with this tribute, especially since Build is among my top 3 favorite series in Kamen Rider, though you could see with this arc and the next few that the production team was still testing the waters of how they wanted the anniversary elements incorporated into the show. I think they found their footing eventually, but there's a few oddities and rough patches to get through. Speaking of, the X-Aid tribute is odd. Emu's appearance here was much different than I expected, as this tribute seems to characterize him more as a loner hero than how friendly and cooperative he was in the X-Aid show with how he tried to reach out to the other riders. It's just so weird because they get another key aspect of his character right, him caring for his patients with the Another X-Aid plotline, so it's just odd to see him being a loner at times. Luckily, the Gyo cast gets a good moment where Sogo tells Gates to take him down if he ever becomes as evil as he's supposed to in the future. The Fourze plus 5 arc is one of the couple times Gyo did a combo pack of tributes from different series in one arc, and I think it worked here in spite of the very loose connection the 2 series have. While we don't get Gentaro, Ryusei, or any of the other Rider Club members due to, of all things, the live-action Bleach movie featuring Gentaro and Ryusei's actors doing its marketing run around the same time, I think seeing the general location of the old school and how Gentaro has impacted it for the better for the future generations is really wholesome and fits with Fourze. As for the Faiz elements, Kusaka is once again being a bastard with his methods, while Takumi's pretty chill, which is accurate to their characterizations from Faiz, but man, that one line about Takumi considering Kusaka a friend bugs me. I know Shirakura also produced Heisei vs. Showa, which gave their relationship a similar characterization, but it's still super weird to me when Takumi just didn't put up with Kusaka's BS in the original series. It's just the one line that puzzles me, and it's weird because the other interactions here are fine besides that. I do like the dramatic plotline they went with for the Another Rider, where he's pushed by the tragic death of his friend to keep them alive with his Another Rider powers, but ultimately has to let go by the end. Very Inoue-esque and fits Faiz well. The Wizard arc was neat. It was interesting to see how another wizard gradually fell into despair after becoming a rider, which is an inverse of what happened to the actual Kamen Rider wizard. In the Wizard series, the main protagonist went from being drowned in despair to be filled with hope when he's given the task of becoming a rider and uses that hope to inspire the others. While the Another Wizard is filled with hope but slowly gets corrupted into despair once he takes on those powers. I like that we got to see Kamen Rider Beast again, as he's a very underrated character, but he isn't as intertwined with the Another Rider plot as previous arcs outside of giving Gates the key to defeating the Another Other Rider, which makes his appearance feel disconnected from the rest of the arc. At least it was cool to see Gates and Woz interact for the first time on screen, and I like the reinforcement of Gates' ideals at the end. The O's arc is another strange one in terms of its premise, as it adds a character who isn't even from that Kamen Rider series into its plot, but the arc's premise works super well when you consider that in the original Kamen Rider O's series, the original Kamen Rider O's was a king himself, which is Sogo's ultimate goal, and this leads to one of the best tributes yet. Another O's is none other than Dan Kuroto, aka Kamen Rider Genom of X8 fame, which is rather wild already, but then we see the plot of this arc revolves around him making his own micronation and Sogo wanting to learn what an evil king acts like so he doesn't fall down that path, which is all very entertaining stuff. Since O's is one of my favorites, it was a joy to see Eiji again and giving the advice he learned in his series to Sogo. It helps that Eiji was intertwined with the plot by being part of an activist group investigating Dan's micronation, so he's utilized well with the arc's plot. Also, Woz saying happy birthday is my favorite Kamen Rider gif, and I send it to all my friends on their birthdays, so thank you so much for that. The Gaim arc is kind of funny with its premise, as the episode starts with Sogo stopping another guy, but then Kota's like, you did it wrong, try again, which leads to two Sogos running around thanks to Kota doing his own time travel BS. Despite Kaito and Kota not getting as much screen time as some may want, I think their presence here was well utilized, with Kaito's strong will to survive thinking encouraging Gates to continue his mission, and Kota's entire purpose being to teach Sogo to trust his comrades of doing the right thing. That might seem like an odd lesson to some given that Gates wants to kill Sogo, but Sogo trusts Gates in spite of this, mainly because he's the closest thing he has to his friend all of his life. Also, this is Kota we're talking about. He still believed in his friend when they did some shady stuff in his series, so it fits in character. The Ghost arc was fine. It's nice to see that even in a timeline where he didn't become a Kamen Rider, Takeru was still out there helping people solve paranormal problems, and the reintroduction of Tsukasa Kadoya, aka Kamen Rider Decade, was fun to see. However, what caught my interest the most was how the Another Rider of this arc was basically a walking corpse. Seeing how the subject never intended to contract with the Timejackers and still decided to save someone on his own even if he may die in the process is tragically inspirational and showcasing the best parts of Kamen Rider Ghost. In between Ghost's arc and the next arc, we have a non-tribute set of episodes that mostly serve to reestablish character motivations and upcoming plot points for future stories, and unfortunately I think this arc showcases my biggest problem with Gio's first set of episodes: repetition in storytelling. It's good stuff, but it starts to feel tiring having to consistently see Sogo re-announce his confidence to be a great king, or Gates confirming that if anything does go wrong with his mission that he'll kill Sogo. They do manage to vary up how this dynamic is showcased in each arc. Hell, Ghost arc took a break from that conflict and focused on its own plot, but it still hits a lot of similar beats in each arc that it kinda wears on me after a bit. I do like Sogo meeting Oma Gio in 2068 though, both to see how far Sogo still has to grow and how Oma is willing to give his younger self advice that might prevent him from existing, which is compelling character work to show that maybe even Oma himself wants Sogo to prevent the bad future he causes in Gates' timeline from existing. Alright, we're on the next major storyline for Gio, and this one's gonna be a fun one. At this point, the show's gonna take a break from paying tribute to Heisei's legacy, and instead, the Gio Riders will be fighting Another Riders based on Kamen Riders from an alternate future where Gates would have defeated Oma Gio as Gates Revive. Attempting to assist Gates on the quest to become Gates Revive is the Woz for this future, referred to as White Woz, who can become Kamen Rider Woz and uses the power of these future riders. The first of these future riders is from 2022. That's right, Kamen Rider Shinobi. Shinobi is probably the most basic of the future rider arcs, and that's probably because they've already been producing the Rider Time Shinobi miniseries, which took this concept of a future ninja society presented here and expanded on it. I don't think that miniseries did it well with how unfunny it was, but the arc itself was pretty solid. I like the message of how you have to rise and grind for the success you want, with another Shinobi wanting to get the success right away instead of taking his time to earn it. And I also love how Gates, being the edge boy he is, isn't putting up with White Woz sucking up to him just yet. White Woz himself is just as charismatic as his original version and a fun addition to the cast, especially as a way to further show off Keisuke Watanabe's amazing acting talents. The quiz arc, showcasing Kamen Rider Quiz from 2040, was much better than I was expecting. The story lets the original writer and another writer fight each other for once, while giving us a powerful estranged father-son story, which is very compelling in that there's no right answers if the father was a great dad or not. Quiz's catchphrases, questions, and personality are also a delight to see, and I really wish he and the other future writer got their own Rider Time spin-off. The Ryuki arc is probably my favorite tribute so far. Ryuki is one of my favorite Kamen Rider seasons, and while this arc isn't as brilliant of a thematic tribute as Decade's Ryuki episodes were, it's still great stuff. We see Sogo face the mirror version of himself, which makes him question his good intentions with cynicism and his own self-doubts. Ultimately, Sogo accepts the good and the bad, going forward with his goals despite it all, which results in him gaining a new form, Gio 2. I like them using elements of the alternate ending movie episode Final in this arc to spice things up from past tributes, and seeing the Ori Journal's boss and Shinji reunite at the end is super heartwarming. One thing you might have noticed from these episodes is that Sogo never got the Ryuki Ride Watch properly. Heisei. Well, that's save for Rider Time Ryuki, a spin-off that also serves as a Riki reunion. Being warned though, there's more blood than usual for Gio and something gay sex. The Kikai arc, featuring Kamen Rider Kikai from 2121, is probably my personal favorite of the 3 future Rider arcs in Gio. I love the ominous yet hopeful vibes Kikai Worlds brings as this post-apocalyptic setting, where the hero attempts to save some of the last surviving children of humanity and becomes friends of Sogo. It's wholesome yet interesting stuff, and quite funny in hindsight with the series after Gio also featuring a yellow hero whose story revolves around technology. We also see the first signs of Schwartz abusing his fellow timejackers for his own needs, of how he forcefully turns into another Kikai. Actor really sells the pain he's going through because despite being a villain, he's still just a kid who fears for his own life. To mark the halfway point of the series, we have the Another Gio arc, and a lot of stuff is happening here, mostly thanks to this being a 4-episode arc instead of 2. Gabe obtains his revived form, Tsukiyomi learns that Schwartz planned Sogo's parents dying as a test to see if he can become a king, Original Recipe Waz becomes Kamen Rider Waz after stealing the powers from White Waz, Gates and Sogo have more rivalry tension that ultimately ends in a truce, and Tsukasa's here again, still deciding if he should destroy the world of Gio. It's a bit hectic, but enjoyable, and its events give some underlying depth for White Waz. You see, being a big Gates fanboy in the future where he's the savior, he just wanted to assist him in his ascension, but his interference with this timeline ultimately led to Gates becoming closer to Sogo and finally calling him a friend, which is very funny dramatic irony. Everything would have gone the way his future said if he just didn't interfere with the current timeline and just look toward the future, which was ultimately the message Gio gave to the Another Gio host, to look toward the future instead of dwelling in what could have happened in the past. Yeah, it's a cliche message for a time travel story, but a good one nonetheless. The Blade arc was a nice reunion of Kenzaki and Hajime from the original Kamen Rider Blade series. Also, D-End was there to promote some new toys, I guess. I do see some Blade fans being mixed on the happy ending they gave Kenzaki and Hajime compared to how bittersweet the original show's ending was, but as someone who considers Blade to be one of their favorite Kamen Rider series, I didn't mind it as much. It was more than 15 years since Blade's ending at the time of this episode's airing, so I didn't mind Gio staff doing what they did with the original series aftermath, and I can buy that all the returning players would do the actions they did in these episodes of how melodramatic the original Blade series was. The Agito arc has a cute reuse of the Another Agito suit from the original series, cool post-series world building with the mass production G3 units, and a clever way of tying Tsukiyomi's new time tracker powers to the current arc. Soichi learned in Agito that his past doesn't define who he is today, so seeing him give that lesson to Tsukiyomi is very nice. Also, the return of the insert song Believe Yourself for the double Trinity fight is one of the coolest moments in Gio, and I wish more classic inserts were reused or at least covers of them. The Hibiki arc, with the return of Kirya from the second half of the show. The Decade Hibiki tribute already gave a lot of the fans of the first half of Hibiki the closure they wanted, so Gio's tribute serves to evolve a concept that could have been great in the second half of Hibiki, but in my opinion wasn't used to their full potential. They actually challenged Kirya's cockiness of the Another Hibiki host while never outright disrespecting him or the second half, because despite the overwhelming majority hating it, they are fans of that half of Hibiki. Besides, it would have been kind of annoying to just stop the show to dump on the second half when we all should have moved past it by now. Gio is a series that loves to look towards the future, so no use dwelling on the past mistakes. Better to roll with the punches and tweak what we need for a good story. Also, playing Hibiki's first opening when Kirya becomes Hibiki is just beautiful. That's one of my favorite Kamen Rider songs, so it's very nice it got to be used one more time for this anniversary season. The Kiva arc was guest written by a good old pal, Toshiki Inoue, the head writer of Kiva, and boy, this one's quite wacky. Another Kiva was Sogo's first love from when he was a kid, and she's just insane. We also get the out-of-nowhere introduction and defeat of Kamen Rider Ginga, who gives Waz his final form. I don't know who on the production staff decided Ginga should be in the Kiva arc when his introduction would fit much better with the next arc, and that Inoue, the guy infamous for hating power-up introductions, would write it, but man, that guy has balls and I want Toei to give him a raise. The Kabuto arc is full of that good old Hell Brothers angst, and Kagami finally getting to be Kabuto after all these years, which is super rewarding to see. I'll admit though, it's one of those moments where I need to be familiar with Kabuto to get even half of its impact. There wasn't much build up to it here in Gio, too busy with Tsukiyomi's backstory and Hell Brothers Edge, but it's still super cool to see regardless. Despite Kabuto being one of my favorites, I'll admit this arc doesn't capture the core aspects I love about Kabuto, mostly because I think the Hell Brothers are the least interesting thing about that show despite them being fun edge boys, but all the Kagami bits make it worth it in the end. The Den-O arc structure and humor feels straight out of Den-O between the bittersweet Imogen plot and Taro's hijinks. It also marks the debut of Gio's final form that isn't Oma Gio, Grand Gio, as well as marking the end of the big tribute arcs. From here on out, the returning actors such as Kamen Rider Eternal and Machine Chaser are mostly going to be jobbers or bonuses instead of being important to the bigger story. As we approach the end, I feel like I need to address how the hell Sogo got Kuga, Doubles, and Drive's ride watch because those weren't in the show proper. Double and Kuga's watches were in the Heisei Generations Forever, along with a really emotional Den-O cameo that teased the full arc we would get in the main show. Drive's watch has been in Gates' hands since the beginning of the show, and was actually a plot point when Grangio debuted, as it showcased that Sogo wasn't strong as Oma yet because he didn't get Drive's blessing properly. Sogo apparently got that blessing in the summer movie, Over Quarter, where we also saw Kamen Rider Drive's secondary, Kamen Rider Mach, return. That said, I heard conflicting reports if it's an alternate timeline movie or if it takes place between episodes 43 and 44. Either way, if you want more Gyo, I'd highly suggest checking these movies out. They're both a lot of fun and great final parties for the Heisei era of Kamen Rider. Back to the show proper, after a really frustrating arc of the return of another Gyo as another Gyo 2, who forces every character that isn't Sogo to relearn their development, we learn that Tsukiyomi and Schwartz are siblings and part of a noble family. After this revelation is brought to light, Schwartz strikes out on his own and becomes another decade in pursuit of his own kinghood over the ruler of time and space, something which Tsukiyomi was destined for initially before Schwartz screwed up the timeline. From there, a bunch of wacky world and timeline merging BS happens that I do not care to describe every detail of, but what I do care to talk about is Tsukasa saying he'll destroy this world multiple times throughout the series, and that going literally nowhere. Much like Decade the show, there was so much great build-up with no payoff at the end to Tsukasa's appearance in Gyo. Let's just skip all the way to the final episode, shall we? In the last minute, Tsukiyomi becomes a Kamen Rider, and the first thing she does is fake betray everyone without telling them. After which, she gets one singular stab in on Schwartz before getting murked. Apparently, Kamen Rider Tsukiyomi was supposed to happen much earlier, but didn't, and now we're left with this really cool suit whose debut series uses it in the worst way possible. Anyway, in the big final battle, Gates dies, calling Gyo a true buddy and telling him to do what he needs to do in order to stop Schwartz. And then, it happens. Sogo becomes Oma Gyo, the King of the Riders, and the Overlord of Darkness. After sweeping Schwartz in the most fun one-sided battle of Kamen Rider history, the future of 2068 is seemingly a reality with Oma Gyo's ascension. Except, Sogo uses his dark powers to fix everything and reset the timeline to its proper place, ending Kamen Rider Gyo in the Heisei era of Kamen Rider with an uncertain future of endless possibilities ahead. Before I give my final thoughts on Gyo, I want to talk about one of the most brilliant concepts it had to celebrate the legacy of the Heisei Kamen Riders, Oma Gyo. Oma Gyo is the ultimate culmination of the ideals of Kamen Rider, even more so than Decade. Since its inception in 1971, Kamen Rider has been about many things, but one of the core aspects was using powers associated with evil for the good of the world. This theme is consistently revisited throughout the whole franchise, from Kuga to Ryuki to Blade to Deno to Double to Build, and finally Gyo. Gyo's conflict is resolved because Sogo chooses to use the demonic powers of Oma for a good purpose. He realizes that just because something comes from a dark source doesn't mean he can't use it for the good of the world. Ultimately, Sogo achieved his dream of becoming a generous overlord, just not in the way he initially thought. And now for my closing thoughts. For all its faults of inconsistent rules, some repetition, and a messy final arc, Kamen Rider Gyo still means a lot to me, specifically in how I analyze media. I used to hyperbolically hate every single aspect about this show because I took the opinions of negative stop having fun guys who critiqued everything based on things like continuity and power levels rather than stuff that actually matters. I looked at the show at a surface level rather than thinking about it in my own creative yet critical way. And honestly, there's still elements of Gyo I hate, especially towards the end, but I found many more things to love over the years. Sogo has grown into becoming one of my favorite writer protagonists for how adorable he can be while still carrying his own inner struggles. I even found Gates much more likable on this viewing. Yeah, he's a simple, headstrong character, but he's a well-done, simple, headstrong character in my opinion. I had a fun time with Gyo, and it was really rewarding to watch after having seen the previous 19 Heisei series beforehand so I could fully understand all the references and legacy story beats. And with that, I have now analyzed every Heisei Kamen Rider show. I love this franchise so much, it's one of my favorite things ever, and I've hope these analyses have made it clear why I feel the way I do. Whatever your status as a fan of this franchise is, I hope you all find some way to enjoy Kamen Rider.